introduce you to them, and then we'll just get down to the subject, the business of the day. The ACDP, who's furthest to my right, is represented by Stephen Swart. The ANC by Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize. The DA Soli Malati representing his party. And in red, the EFF Mandisa Mashego representing. Thank you very much, comrades. And I will move on now to the Freedom Front Plus. Thank you very much, comrades. I did request that we all respect each other. Freedom Front Plus is represented by Anton Alberts, and the IFP by Alko Ngobese, the UDM by Tandi Nontenja. Just to give a bit of background, we are here at the invitation of the South African Human Rights Commission, and we decided as Full View on SABC News to look at the human rights factor in the various manifestos of the various political parties. Some have called this election and a watershed election, and we know that a number of matters have been brought to the fore, a lot of them having to do with human rights, and we want to see how the various political parties have reflected these in their manifestos, namely education, health, land, and corruption. Let's start with the ACDP. By the way, we're running a stopwatch. We're giving each speaker 2 minutes each, and they will then, when their time is up, agree to give it on to the next speaker. So, is the clock ready? Shall we start now?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Sapiso, and thank you to the SABC, and thank you to the Human Rights Commission for hosting this wonderful evening, and I want to thank my supporters for being here. Now, the ACDP has been in Parliament since 1994, and we present Judeo-Christian values as our basis. We know the majority of South Africans are believers. We stand for freedom of religion, and we present a manifesto of uniting, building, and growing. And so we approach the issues in our nation from that perspective. I've been in Parliament for 20 years, and as I've studied the Constitution as a constitutional lawyer myself, our biggest concern is the lack of progress in our socio-economic rights. And a lot of that relates to the budgetary issues. A lot of that relates, I serve on the Finance Committee, I serve on the Justice Committee, I helped appoint the Human Rights Commission, I sat on the SABC inquiry. And what we are finding is budgetary constraints. And we as believers in this nation need to understand that we have the answers. And when we sat together on the ESCOM inquiry, together, we faced issues and we started to expose the corruption that has resulted in tens of billions of rands being stolen from our nation. And as Minister Tito Mboweni said, he said in Parliament, we are in the deepest, darkest valley, Psalm 23, but the Lord is with us. And I said the ACDP agrees, but it is because of the ANC and the looting and corrupting that has taken place that we are in that position. So we need to restore the walls of our societies. We need to rebuild the walls of society. That is what Tito Mboweni said as well. So we have policies on education. We've got policies on health, but it relates to being good stewards and being servant leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, could you respond also to some of that, the fact that according to the ACDP, corruption has robbed us as a country in moving forward in social development? Also reflect on the human rights factor if you can. Your 2 minutes, shall we begin it now?
Thank you very much. I'm a volunteer. I would like to thank really the Human Rights Commission for reminding us that whatever we do as the ANC is based on the culture of human rights, the rule of law, and issues of justice, the right to dignity and equality. And we fully agree with the spirit of the human rights. We have a long history as the ANC. Our own struggle was motivated by gross human rights violations in society, and hence we mobilized around those issues. But I want to quickly move into the Constitution. The very establishment of the Human Rights Commission, Section 9 institutions, is our ongoing, deliberate effort to make sure that these are not electioneering issues, but they are nation building. We leave them continuously. Just today, President Ramaphosa was opening the Sexual Offences Court. Not the first one. There are many in the country. It's part of saying, let's deal with human rights violations consistently, continuously. But with regard to the issue of corruption, in our own manifesto, establish the commission that would look at
Lost that feed there from Constitution Hill. We'll come back to that as soon as you can. We're live.
And issues are emerging. The ANC is not intimidated. We would have stopped it. But we say to people, go in big numbers. Those who have erred will be held accountable. There is no policy in the ANC which encourages violations of
Thanks, Tepi. So I'll stay on topic given the key themes that you have articulated. So our manifesto focuses in terms of giving life to human rights as enshrined in the Constitution is to restore the dignity of poor people, many of whom to this day still do not have access to basic services. There are communities to this day who still do not have access to clean drinkable water, who do not have access to decent housing and electricity. So the greatest assault that the ANC government has done to South Africa is violation of human rights. So that is why in our manifesto the focus is on expanding access to basic services so that communities can have the dignity that they need when they leave their households. But a key element of that is job creation, because without an income in a household, there is no way that you can have dignity if you are a breadwinner and you are unable to provide for your families. And that's why a key element of ours is about creating job creation opportunities for young people, making sure that there's city-led growth. We invest in infrastructure that ultimately leads to jobs, because we want to have a job in every home, but more particularly when it comes to healthcare, to make sure that communities reside within distances where there's access to primary healthcare services, that our clinics have extensive hours that are operational so that people are not turned away because the clinic closed at 5 when they need medical care, because medical intervention does not exist within 9 to 5. People get sick all the time. And that is why where we govern, we've extended those operational hours. We have made sure that also in terms of distribution of medicine, that we've got various facilities so that there is no interruption in the flow of medicine to communities, because an unhealthy society cannot be productive. And lastly, with regards to fighting corruption, an important element is to showcase that there's consequences for corruption. And in our manifesto, we make a proposal for a 15-year
water in South Africa. And the first 24 would have employed 10,000 artisans to deal with water leaks, because we know that South Africa is a water scarce country, and the poorest of the poor are the ones who suffer the most. We deal with issues of housing, healthcare, education, from the point of view of human rights, from the point of view of justice. We know that there's a shortage of teachers all over the country. There's a shortage of police officers. Crime is a mess.
Has been speaking did not go on air. So please note, this is the reason why we're going to give the EFF another 2 minutes. So we're going to take a quick break to resolve.
Complicated cases. Your black friends might be running.
Ningacula, comrade. You can start a song. Thank you. Yeah, they are singing.
Masibambeni lapho siyabonga. Stand by. 30 seconds. Ten seconds. Well, welcome back to our elections debate here at Constitutional Hill. Represented is the ACDP, ANC, DA, EFF, Freedom Front, plus IFP, as well as the UDM. We are talking about 4 main themes: education, land, health, and corruption, and all this from the springboard of human rights, how the parties are reflecting this in their conversation. Before we went on the break, you heard from the ACDP complaining about budgetary constraints, the ANC saying the bedrock of their movement and their policies is human rights, and the DA saying that, in fact, the ANC has done the complete opposite. Their legacy is that of not respecting human rights. Let's hear now from the EFF's Mandisa Mashego to hear how they respond to that. Their time starts now.
There can be no other justice except access to land, and that is why the EFF has, since it went into Parliament, pushed for land expropriation without compensation, and the motion was finally accepted last year. So that is the first premise of the EFF's manifesto this year and commitments that we make to all our voters. The second aspect is jobs. So land and jobs go hand in hand, and they go hand in hand immediately. Why immediately? Because for 376 years, black people and particularly Africans in this country have endured immense suffering. But over the last 25 years, the biggest miscarriage of justice has been committed under the African National Congress because they refused to use the absolute majority they always had to convert the political power that we had into economic power. Therefore, the EFF says on health care, one of the most basic and fundamental things that need to happen is that we need 24-hour clinics in each and every ward in this country. It is affordable. The second thing that we need is that education must become free on a qualitative and decolonized basis, and that means up to the first junior degree, and that will mean a lot of upskilling and capacitating of teachers and even increasing the teacher population, because we know that majority township schools are underpopulated in terms of teachers. On the healthcare front, additionally, we also have a massive shortage of specialist doctors. It's a well-documented fact that in KZN there are basically no oncologists in the public hospitals. We also want to state it up front that infrastructure is a big contributor towards jobs. And the ANC has unwittingly let go of rail infrastructure, and that's going to be one of the key pillars of the manifesto commitments of the EFF, where we will roll out massive rail infrastructure upgrades to also move transportation of goods from the roads, which has become immensely expensive to maintain.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell. All right, so let's now move on to the IFP's Alko Ngobese, who's going to share their point of view as a party on how some of these challenges ought to be tackled. Let's start now.
Thank you, Presenter, and good evening to all political parties and to the IFP supporters. You know, during the CODESA negotiations, our leader, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, negotiated for the Bill of Rights to be included in our Constitution. This is why today we got a Bill of Rights. The IFP is saying the human rights are violated when the majority of our people in this country don't have a proper access to a healthcare system. People wake up early in the morning around 3 o'clock to go and queue up outside the clinics. At the end of the day, they just get a Panado. And we are saying as long as we have children who are taught under the trees, there are no school facilities, the human rights are violated. We are saying the proper infrastructure should be put in place by all the municipalities, especially in Gauteng and as well as in rural areas. Where the IFP have governed, you know that we built more than 6,000 schools in KZN. That's a record. The ANC is still struggling even to build 1,500 schools as we speak. We know that immediately when the ANC came into power, they closed all the colleges where the nurses and teachers were trained. But if the IFP is given a chance to run this country, we are not going to allow criminals to run our streets. As we are seeing now, women and children are raped every day, and people are getting away with murder. The IFP is going to be very tough on such criminals.
All right, thank you very much. The IFP ending there before time is up. Okay, so let's give the Freedom Front Plus, Anton Alberts, an opportunity to respond according to his party's manifesto, and perhaps just also some of what you think you would like to respond to from the comments of the others, starting now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We appreciate it. The Freedom Front Plus is a Christian-based party focused on minorities, but we build our economy, our systems of thinking based on human rights and international human rights. So our manifesto reflects that. And what we're concerned about for the country as a whole is the fact that socio-economic rights are left behind due to mismanagement by the ANC government. We see that we have a 27% unemployment rate in South Africa. We see that there is so many things going wrong within the policing department. People don't feel safe anymore. Our schools don't deliver quality outset that will actually help the children who leave school to build a business for themselves or actually go out to university and study further. And even when they leave university, we find that they can't find jobs. And that's all due to the ANC's mismanagement of our economy. So we have to fix that. There are many other things that's wrong. Hospitals that looks like slaughterhouses where people go to die, they have no real assistance there. We really have to change that, and we can only change that if we change the way we look at how we manage things, and which means we must look at merit again. We must appoint the best people, irrespective of race, in positions in government, but also in the private sector. And we must help those people who are left behind and build a path for them through bursaries so that they can study further and get ahead in life as well. But you cannot help the poor if the people who are supposed to help the poor cannot help themselves even, cannot govern, cannot manage. We see this today. We see poor policing happening. We see sewage in our rivers and in our water. We see the mismanagement all over the show. We see it in Eskom that is failing. So the only way we can change is to go back and look at merit, and that's the central point of our party to ensure human rights are protected going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the final speaker in this round, the UDM's Thandi Nontenja. What are your thoughts on the themes and what you've heard from the other political parties? Starting, Promise, shall we start now? Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. The UDM's theme in these elections is prosperity and dignity for all. That talks to the human rights. There is no dignity for somebody that's not working. We are saying everybody should be working, and we cannot queue for jobs, for everyone must go and queue for jobs. We say there must be sector banks that are going to fund the youth that we take to tertiary education. They come out with their degrees, they're still unemployed. They sit in the street corners, they are driven to suicide because the violation of their human rights is in the hands of the corrupt ruling party. We are saying good governance is the order of the day, where there is no corruption, where there is no cadre deployment, where everybody gets what is due to them by not being connected. We are saying, what's the point of having clinics that have no medication? That is violation of human rights. If they go and queue in the clinics and there is no medication, then their rights are violated. We are looking at the justice system to say that cluster where the SABC, where your correctional services, where your justice system should be clustered, those should be working hands in hands, because we are seeing violation of human rights of women and children on a daily basis, where the criminals have more rights than the citizens of this country. We are saying when the UDM comes into power, we look after the environment, because that is the future of our children. We are looking after the environment because that's where the next generations will be looking to, and they will be condemning us for letting the environment go to waste.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Nontenja. Thank you very much. So allow me to introduce you to our commentators today, our analyst, Dr. Trevor Ngwane, and he's with the University of Johannesburg. Tasneem Esop is with the University of the Witwatersrand. As we mentioned earlier on, the invitation here at the behest of the South African Human Rights Commission. The Constitution guarantees the right to basic education, and I know these were your opening statements, but I want to just reflect on some of the main complaints received by the Human Rights Commission. Diversity, access, conditions at school, private schools, discrimination, corporal punishment, language, and administrative action which negatively impact on learners. I raised these, Ms. Esop, because I'm asking you, from what the political parties said with regards to education, was this reflected? In other words, are they in touch with what is going out there in society?
So, I mean, I think that what the parties have given us, or some of the parties that spoke to human rights issues, is how difficult it is to separate broad conversations about human rights from socioeconomic rights, and really that has become the center of our debates about rights. I think the list that you provided us from the SAHRC is really important because it gives us a kind of indication of where people are bringing complaints about human rights issues. And I want to challenge the parties, really. Some spoke directly to human rights issues in their manifestos, and others, kind of skirted around issues, leaving it to the big political debates of the day. But I think if we're going to have a discussion about human rights, and if we're going to look at that in the context of manifestos, let's lead into a discussion about where you place human rights and in the context of socioeconomic rights in your manifestos. So, I mean, I'm talking here about speaking specifically to gender-based violence, speaking specifically to schools infrastructure, for example, speaking specifically to, with parties that have a governance track record, that track record in governance, and how that influences how we perceive the party's seriousness about human rights. So I think those are some of the issues I just want to raise. But I think, yeah, we need to just contextualize those debates and move deeper into discussions about those specific issues that are important around human rights and socioeconomic rights in the country at the moment.
Dr. Ngwane, what is your thought? I'm going to raise the names of Michael Komape, Lumka Mkethwa, which have been in the media many a times. But some analysts and pundits are saying if you look at the manifestos of the political parties, even though they speak broadly about the rights of children, they really don't drill down to what are the main issues that are affecting children like this, children who die in pit latrines. They would have had to be in a situation where they're continually in a poverty trap, inherited poverty. Why are these parties not dealing with some of these issues? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm afraid the parties have fallen into the trap of what I can call liberal democratic politics, where during election time, bombastic promises are made, and then after that they are forgotten, and then the voters are remembered again during the next election. So in a way, I'd like the parties to tell us how are they going to empower the voter? Because at the moment, the vote disempowers. People vote, they are told that I will do this and this for you, but then you must sit at home and wait for delivery. So I think that we need to change our approach, and parties like the EFF, which promise revolution, I think they should not allow themselves to be sucked into a system which is used to dupe and fool the people. Where is the militancy? You know, we talk about land. Where are the land occupations? We talk about, so there are many things going on which are leaving the voters disempowered, watching a spectacle. Even now, it's sad to me to see members of the working class being divided along party lines when they share the same problems. So I think somehow we have to find a way of approaching politics which builds the power and the strength of ordinary people to fight around issues which touch them all.
Okay, Dr. Ngwane, let's hear from those members of the working class whom you say are being divided along political lines. We're going to take 7 questions, one from a political party. Please be very clear whom you'd like to direct that question to, and that person will be given an opportunity to answer. Just remember, if you all pose your question to one person, that means you leave out the other political parties, and therefore they do not get an opportunity to speak. So if you could please just come to the front, and perhaps while we do that, I'd like to ask you as the political parties to respond in literally a minute each to some of the issues that have been raised by the fact that it's almost as if you're cosmetic with some of the policy proposals that you are making in your manifestos. And I want to raise another issue that the Human Rights Commission mentioned, that of protests. While the opposition parties may point a finger at the governing party, which is the ANC, some of those members are involved in protests which prevent children from going to school, denying the child a right to education. How do you respond to that? Your role in those as civic society. Let's start with the ACDP. You have a minute. Your minute starts now.
Thank you for those very valid comments. And I've been serving on the Justice Committee for almost 20 years, and I was very perturbed when the sexual offences courts were closed. And I've tried as hard as possible to have them reintroduced, and they are now being reintroduced. The second issue related to the Scorpions, which were a very effective crime-fighting unit, fighting corruption. They were closed because they were too effective. We see it's now being reintroduced. We've been fighting corruption. But just let me, when the African Charter of Human Rights speaks about family rights as well, we don't have that in our constitution. It was argued in the Constitutional Court. We stand for family values. So what have we as the ACDP done concretely? Well, we passed a private member's bill for paternity leave. We support maternity leave, but we support paternity leave to encourage the father and the mother to build a family, because we're a fatherless society. That's many of our challenges. So what are we doing? And that we've done concrete steps. That bill was passed by an opposition party with the support of all the parties in Parliament. That's concrete. Thank you very much.
That's the ACDP. The ANC?
Thank you very much. I just want to emphasize the point that as the ANC, we work in partnership with civil society. For instance, I mentioned that President Ramaphosa was launching a court, signing a declaration with civil society, having responded to their call to deal with gender-based violence and femicide. With regard to education, we have made huge commitments, and I want people to understand what is meant when we talk about gradual realization of human rights. In basic education, right now, we have made sure that we not only look at the school entry level, but we focus at an ECD level, where each and every child will have an equipment so as to learn to use ICTs. But also, when you look at what we've done, feeding skills and higher education, the skills-free education.
The minute is up. Thank you very much, Dr. Mkhize. And just to let you know that if you are at home watching, SABCnews.com, that is where you can stream in on the conversation. And we do have a hashtag, it's hashtag Human Rights SABC Hall Debates. And let's now go to the DA to get a response from you, Mr. Malatsi. Your minute starts now.
Thanks, Sepi. So there are two issues that stood out. One is how we give life to the right to basic education. And I think a key element of that is school infrastructure, in making sure that the facilities at schools provide the conducive environment for learning. And where we govern, we make sure that the provision of that is non-negotiable. The safety of learners at schools is one important element. But linked to that is also making sure that all the learning material in schools is available at all times, so that there is no shortage of textbooks, as has been the case in some provinces governed by the ANC. And the Human Rights Commission will know that in Mpumalanga, when there was a shortage of textbooks, it was the DA that submitted that complaint, and ultimately the investigation even ruled against the Mpumalanga Department of Basic Education in there. The second element is about teacher training, how we constantly need to provide the teacher training so that the curriculum also provides and responds to the need of the environment that we are in at this stage, but also making sure that teachers are in classes teaching.
Thank you very much. So let's hear the response of the EFF now.
we are the most consistent political party in South Africa. I take the criticism, but I'm not taking it as well as I should, because in 2018, it's a well-documented fact, the EFF ran a year-long campaign to expose the weaknesses of the collapsing healthcare system, especially here in Gauteng. We ran a robust campaign, went to all hospitals, had meetings with hospital CEOs, and raised issues of literally infrastructure collapsing. I went to Charlotte Maxeke Hospital when the roof collapsed almost onto a casualty, and many journalists were there. So we can't be accused of lack of militancy. We ran land expropriation, or rather land occupation campaigns, and actually occupied land. In Gauteng, the EFF has occupied in excess of 40 pieces of available land and gave communities that land, and they are living on it. And in Joburg and in Tshwane, we've managed to get them at least mobile toilets for now. Let's come back to the issue of having evidence for your work. We are the ones who push for land expropriation without compensation. We push for labor broking to be scrapped and for insourcing to be the order of the day. Thank you.
Mr. Ngobese?
No, the IFP is saying whenever there is a service delivery protest in our township and elsewhere, we should allow our kids to go and attend classes at school. We should do that because the future of this country depends on our children. Now, the schools must have an adequate infrastructure. You know, the imbalances of the past. If you go to the former white schools as we speak, you'll find there's a netball sports facility, there's soccer facilities, and all those facilities that are not found in the schools in the township. We need to we need to ensure that the issue of the past, when the apartheid used to treat our people differently, it comes to end. The IFP is saying a teacher must teach, a learner must learn. Unions must stop calling meetings during working hours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ngobese. Anton Alberts, your minute starts now.
Thank you. Our children's important. Without them, we won't have a future. So we need to protect them. We need to protect schools. So we have to build more schools. There must be proper infrastructure everywhere. And we must not waste money on the Guptas. They must go towards our schools because that's our future. We must have good teachers. We must appoint the best teachers. And those who don't want to work must be fired. Finish. Because they are derelicting our children. They are leaving them in dire straits. They will not get anywhere in life. We need to raise the pass rate. We need to raise the quality of schooling so that when our kids are grown-ups, they will be able to build a business for themselves. They will be able to go to university and they will have a future. And they must also be protected against unrest. And therefore we have passed, or we have submitted a private member's bill in Parliament to protect our children so that nobody will be able to hold a petition or any form of canvassing or any form of action in front of schools within 500 meters because they deserve to be protected. Okay. We have that protection in Parliament, but not for our children, so they deserve it. Thank you.
Mr. Alberts. And finally, let's hear from the UDM, Tangino Ntanja.
Talking about the protests, if one would look closely, it's led by the same ruling party. That seems to be the only language that they know. They haven't managed to manage their own internal wrangles. So if one faction is unhappy, they take to the streets. So they are the ones who are causing the chaos within the country. But another angle that they are failing on is where, when a minister changes, the curriculum changes, which means the policies are not the organizations. They seem to be coming from individuals. So this change of curriculum, every time they change a minister, is destabilizing the education system in the country. So they have to look internally and they have to start managing their own, because that's where it lies.
All right, so that is before your time is up. So you have heard what the various political parties have said. The DA says where they govern, they ensure that infrastructure is safe and that no learners suffer. I will ask the DA to answer this at a later point. The school in Roodepoort, where teachers and parents shut down the school because of derelict infrastructure, where water was seeping in. How do you respond to that? The ANC, you say that you are human rights centered. And the allegation is it is because of your fractured party, your corruption, that you have situations where students or learners are forced to study in cobbled brick houses, under trees, no sanitation. Where there's a feeding scheme, there's allegations of corruption. Just when I asked earlier on about the cost of corruption, they said it's 27 billion rand annually, costing 76,000 jobs. Are you convinced that these are the people that you should vote for? I was asked to take questions, 7 questions, 7 answers. So this was, okay, so we start there. Is that the first? So do we have all of the 7 questions ready? So please stick to a question and make sure you indicate whom you are posing your question to. Please go ahead now.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Khotso Power from the city of Ekurhuleni. My question goes directly to the DA. If the DA actually claims to be such a human rights agency...
Okay, we're going to, unfortunately that microphone is not working. Would you mind, sir, if I come to this gentleman here while we attend to your microphone? Apologies for that.
Thank you very much. My name is Reba Motsuakumo. From Johannesburg, South Terfontein. My question is actually directed to Mandisa Mashego, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. What I wanted to find out from you, leader, is that after we take over government, what is it that the EFF going to do in terms of how to grow industrialization, particularly in areas like Soweto, areas like Tembisa? How is the EFF going to go about increasing whatever that is being put to place there in terms of growing the economy of the country? And my second question, it will be around gender.
Okay, I'm going to ask that we take just one question. Unfortunately, we want to give as many people an opportunity to ask a question. We just have 2 hours, so I made that clear at the very beginning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Khotso Power, a member of the African National Congress, a leader of the ANC Youth League, and a resident of the city of Ekurhuleni. My question goes to the Democratic Alliance. If they so claim to be such a democratic organization that values equality, why is it that it's only black people within the DA that are here in an organization that is predominantly white? And it's very important. The DA needs to respond. If they're talking so harshly about the ANC and its corruption, what about their corruption in the EFF-led municipality with the face of the DA in Tshwane, where there's a lot of money that has been looted out of the coffers of Tshwane, and the DA is actually running away with the matter? They've given us a DA mayor who actually claims that he has been put in a situation where with something that he has no control over. He found the crisis there. So it's a crisis that has been propelled by the DA and the EFF within Tshwane and the jobs that people are losing within Johannesburg. So what is the DA promising us that is you now?
All right, thank you very much. So a question from the UDM.
My question is directed to the UDM also. I just want to find out, how does the UDM intend to apply the gender-based violence situation into the own... Actually, I just want to find out, how does the UDM gonna tackle the situation of the gender-based violence? People are getting killed, like women are getting killed. Children are getting raped all the time. So how does the UDM gonna tackle all that?
Okay, thank you very much. ACDP.
Good evening. It's Kucho Mkhetla from ACDP, the only Christian party that I know of. And my question is to the ANC. I'm concerned about your promise for quality education. Firstly, because 30% is a pass mark. Number two, we've got subjects like life orientation and maths lead. My question is, where does a young person go with these subjects anywhere in the world? Because even some of the universities in South Africa do not even acknowledge life orientation. So are you not setting up the young people of South Africa for failure? That's my question.
All right. Okay, let's take a question from the DA, please. Thank you, comrades. ANC, I am going to ask you for the very last time, we will penalize your candidate here if you continue to disrupt this conversation. Thank you very much. We'll take a question from the DA now.
Thank you. Greeting to leadership there. My name is Enes Butelezi from Alexandra, which is the most poor of the poorest township in this country. My question is directed to one leader who haven't ate Gupta curry yet, Soli Malatsi. My question here is, can he clarify us on what will be the DA strategy to create jobs and to make sure that all South Africans get fair access to those job opportunities without any, let me not say it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I wish you had said it so that we knew what you were thinking. And this is from the IFP.
Good evening, viewers and panel.
Just hold the mic towards your mouth so that we can...
My name is Sipo. Sipo Tongo.
Yes.
I'm residing in Hip. I have two questions. One question is based to African National Congress, and other question based to Inkatha Freedom Party. I want to ask a professor, I forgot her name, what was the good reason to close down all the colleges, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, because those colleges were affordable. Students were able to afford those student funds. I want to ask the IFP.
No, you can only unfortunately ask one question, sir. Like I did with the other parties, you get your one question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break and allow your leaders to respond to some of the questions that you've posed. You are watching SABC, and please do stream in on at sabcnews.com.
Oh, sir. Finally, getting the click in closer, right? Fitting into your thin pants. Making it out of the friend zone.
With so many good deals at the Tops at Spa Fest, you'll find any reason to celebrate.
Ayanda, production na Kenotie.
You can sing! You can sing! welcome back. You are watching SABC News Full View. And as you can see, we're coming to you from Constitution Hill, where the various political parties, the top seven, who are here to debate the issue of human rights. And you can see a very vibey atmosphere, especially from the EFF crowd here to the left, and the ANC on the right. Represented, of course, included are the IFP, ACDP, UDM, and the Democratic Alliance, all who are here to participate in this discussion, where we're looking at a number of issues, mainly education, health, land, and corruption. How human rights of South Africans are affected by some of these issues. But as you can see there, a stretching IFP, the IFP trying to rouse itself up.
Stand by,
let me just get them to sit down. Siyabong. Okay, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, Siyabonga, thank you very much. So, some of you had questions for your leaders, and I'm sure you'd like to hear the answers to that. So I'm going to ask you to please give them an opportunity. And the first question was from the EFF, asking your representative, Mandisa Masho, how you intend to grow the industrial sector.
So one of the key things over and above what we have stated in our manifesto, that we will increase corporate taxes, because in South Africa for over 30 years now, corporate taxes have actually gone the other way and consumers have paid more tax. But over and above that, the EFF is going to make sure that it develops special economic zones as well as special tax-free zones. What does that mean? It means that we are going to be open to companies that are going to create more than 2,000 jobs in a specific area, not in different locations. In one location, let's make, for example, you want to open up a factory to manufacture glass. We will make sure that if you employ no less than 2,000 people, pay them a certain basic salary as agreed to between us and yourself, because you know that we have stipulated minimum wages and we're not negotiable on that, and that workers get proper benefits, that there's no labor broking involved. We are happy, of course, within the context of other conditions, to give companies tax-free economic zones within which to operate from. So that's one concrete economic proposition. But the other are reliant on our Agrarian Reform Act, which we are going to pass as soon as we take over government after May 2019. We're going to pass the Agrarian Reform Act to allow us to develop small-scale farms.
I'm going to have to end it there. Let's give... So the DA, the question was asked, phrased like this: how do you respond to EFF-led corruption with the face of the DA in Gauteng? And what exactly are you promising? What new are you bringing to the table?
Well, I think it's important to respond to the spurious allegations that were raised. One is there has been no finding whatsoever of corrupt activities in the DA-led coalition government in the city of Joburg. And anyone who reasonably follows developments in there will know that there has not been any finding of corruption against the administration led by Herman Mashaba. But secondly, even in Tshwane, there hasn't. It was in Tshwane where the DA-led coalition, when issues were brought to the table regarding irregularities with Cleared Africa, that the mayor made a recommendation to council to suspend the city manager. And it was the ANC Khotso that voted against that motion in the city of Tshwane. So you can't speak about that. And secondly, our organization is an organization for all people, whether you are black, you are white, you are Indian. And if you are uncomfortable about the rise and the presence of black DA members who are leaders in the DA, that is your own racial prejudice. This is the face of the organization. And lastly...
Okay, and I'm afraid your time is up. As I mentioned, political parties, you do have a minute to respond, and we are using the countdown clock to do that. So the UDM, the question has been on GBV. How do you intend to deal with that?
First and foremost, the UDM believes that when you violate somebody else's rights, you forfeit yours. So there is no reason why, when somebody has violated somebody else's rights, they must be given bail and all that. We are also calling for a synergy on the working of the justice system as a whole, where the SAPs, when they've arrested somebody, the courts must charge the person, and no bail must be given. The person must not be given a parole where that person is being found guilty of violating some people's rights, because gender violence is violation of human rights. So we are saying no bail, we are saying no parole. So we want these institutions to work as government institutions, not in isolations as they are doing at the moment.
Okay, so you ended before your time was up. The ACDP, the promise of quality education, that question was posed to you. Do you have a microphone, please?
Yeah.
This next question was to the ACDP, Dr. Mkhize.
What? I don't mind. I will answer it. But I think it was to the ANC, but we will...
Okay, I noted it. Okay. My apologies. Let's go to Dr. Mkhize then.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please go ahead. What I heard was ACDP, but if the decision between the two of you is that Dr. Mkhize will answer.
Give it to us. Yeah, the ACDP.
The other parties are ready to answer, but the ANC says they'll answer. Okay.
Give it to us. The ACDP.
Okay, allow the ANC to answer, please. Yes.
The ACDP posed the question to the ANC. The question was, are we not concerned about issues of quality education when in some instances we have 30% passing? And I think it's a fair question to ask the ruling party. If you look at quality of education, it's not one intervention. We have seen an increase in the high rate, the ratings of the pass rate of students at the end of grade 12. But with regard to quality, we are doing quite a number of things that we are putting in our manifesto.
Like 30%.
Whereby students, we have introduced the high school technical matric, which really is beginning to look at the quality of skills that young people can get before they even leave school. And also what is happening with the youth and skills regime is also about improving the quality of education and improving prospects for work.
Thank you very much, Professor Mkhize. And my apologies for that. I'm not beyond correction, so I hope you're... Thank you very much. So the DA, what strategy on jobs so that all will benefit? And this, unless under correction, was directed to the DA. Please.
Thank you very much. I mean, one of the key elements of the manifesto is the creation of jobs, particularly for, one, school leavers. You'll realize that for a lot of school leavers, their lack of experience makes them not to be competitive in the job market. So we propose the National Youth Civilian Program, which will be a 2-year skills development program in areas of health, education, and policing, so that these young people who are currently unemployable because of the lack of experience can be absorbed in there. But on a larger scale, it also includes support for SMMEs, because the future drivers of job creation are small, medium entrepreneurs. So we do that by enhancing support through financial support, but also eliminating red tape and allowing small entrepreneurs to utilize and leverage municipal facilities that they can use and operate from on a continuous basis for them to compete in the state. And lastly, we will pass a Jobs Act. What that will do is to incentivize corporates that are investing in education and skills development.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Malati. To be fair, thank you. Comrades, I know the instructions indication that you're getting is that you can sing. All right, we'll take a break then.
My world is natural and unexplored. There is an inner urge to seek beyond the unseen. Many have heard of it, but few have seen it.
Very real. This is what Africa's about.
Beneath the sea. Over the mountains. On and off the grid, we awaken the human desire.
Horse's tooth in his mouth for crying out loud.
Slowly but surely. Come ride with us. Going nowhere slowly. On DSTV channel 156, SABC Encore.
You're watching a special live debate, election debate here from Constitution Hill, where 7 parties are represented, and they are talking about the issue of human rights from 4 main themes. We're talking about education, we're talking about land, we're talking about health, and we're talking about corruption. The political party members have been asking questions to their leaders, and of course we've got our residents analysts here who've been unpacking the manifestos, and really, if they do reflect the human rights element which they talk about. Earlier on, we had a question from the party supporters. A member question was asked to the IFP. Perhaps if I could just allow the IFP candidate to respond to that about the question was really about the situation here in Gauteng and jobs, if I understood it correctly. So would the IFP like to respond to that before we move on to, it was a question from one of your members, unless you want to pass it on to the other political parties to answer. It was a question about jobs here in Gauteng, if I understood it correctly.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, thank you, Tsepiso, for the opportunity. The question was about how will the IFP ensure that there is a job creation in Gauteng? One, we need to do a skills development, ensure that all the youth with grade 12 and so on are well trained, using our colleges and other institutions to make sure that they are skilled. You know that immediately you graduate from grade 12 from school, you are graduate back to the streets. Because there are not enough facilities where our youth can develop their skills. So we are saying, as the IFP, we need to embark on skills development to ensure that the youth is employable.
I'm going to go to my resident analyst here and ask this question. The political parties have been talking about various issues, and understandably, it's electioneering time. Your supporters want to understand your position on certain issues. The issue of GBV was raised. None of the political parties spoke about strengthening security at schools to ensure that there aren't increasing number of incidents, not only of girl rapes, but also we've seen horrific incidents of even young men and boys being subjected to that. Nobody has spoken about teenage pregnancies, ensuring that we keep our young girls in school and ensuring that they are not disproportionately punished for the activities of a young girl and boy in school. Nobody has spoken about the race issue. We've seen many incidents of racism being raised in the political arena about racism in schools. The zoning issue, that issue has been raised. Why is it the political parties have not spoken about that, especially if we're talking about human rights issues? Let me start with you, Dr. Ngwani. What is your response to that? Why is this missing from the conversation?
Yeah, I think there's a tendency to focus on cosmetic issues and cosmetic solutions. So, for example, it is clear that under apartheid, there was structural inequality with the majority of people without access to wealth. So I don't hear any party here, except perhaps the EFF, talking about agrarian reform. But otherwise, I don't hear how the parties are going to address issues like apartheid geography, the fact that the majority of black people, are sitting at home unemployed, the fact that white monopoly capital still rules the roost. And I'm not happy with ANC plan just to create a few black bourgeoisie and leaving the rest of society behind. So I think really we have to look at fundamental structural economic change and not just look at the surface. I think social ills, unemployment, drug abuse, gender violence emerge from a situation where most people are poor, they don't have a way of making a living.
Tasneem Essop?
Yeah, so I mean, I have to agree with Trevor that what we are missing a lot of the time, especially from the manifestos, is structural solutions to structural problems. And I think what we end up getting is either no detail, so what happens is that parties will define the problems and lay that out in the manifestos, or too much detail where you go into really minor details, in terms of what's happening on the ground. But I think what we're missing is the real structural solution here. And I mean, the parties have their ideological lenses that they will look through to give us what their structural solutions are. And some of those will be found really flat-footed, and others might have more, currency. So I think we do need to focus on that. I just want to also put it out there that we're talking about human rights here, and all of the parties will, of course, accept at a platform like this that they agree with human rights and that they take human rights seriously. But when you look into the manifestos, those contradictions start to emerge. So I want us not to take it at the surface level, but also to think about those contradictions that do emerge when we look into the manifestos around these key issues and how the parties want to address them.
All right, so the political parties have made their points very clear about education. They've hinted at corruption. But I'm going to ask the audience here, look at your political party leaders. And I'm going to ask each and every one of you whether you can truly say absolutely 100% categorically that no party who's sitting here at this podium is absolutely free of corruption.
We are here.
Okay. All right. Okay. Corruption is a societal problem. So it is a microcosm of society. When we talk about...
I'm here.
Okay, you are here. You are here. When we talk about... Can I make this point and you also get an opportunity?
Sure.
When we talk about the relationship between corruptor and corruptee, are you saying that members of society are not a part of a political group, any one of these that are seated here? I'm going to take questions, 7 of them, pose them to your political leaders, and then they can respond. Let's start with the EFF.
Thank you. Let's actually start here. You know, this country has become a political circus led under the ANC by political clowns who continue to juggle food parcels and T-shirts for entertainment, as you can see that. But I'm not there. The question is, you know, public this question goes to the leader of the EFF, of course.
Okay, give him an opportunity.
Well, they are best with howling, and we are not surprised, you know. This is what they do. They howl. Instead of fulfilling service delivery, they howl. I'm not there. The question is to the leader of the EFF, Ms. Mandisa Mashego. What will happen to the public servants, public representatives? You have looted South Africa because South Africa is at the brink of catastrophe because of thieves led under the ANC who are still in the public domain and nothing is done to them. Busasa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you. Masiba Mbeni. All right. Let's hear from the UDM. Thank you, comrades.
All right. EFF, let me give you advice. EFF, let me give you advice. Do not be juggled by...
Okay, I have made this clear that if you do not allow another party an opportunity to speak, I will punish your leader. Thank you. UDM?
I wish that would be the ANC, Lamasela. The UDM, since it was started in 1997, it has been a party which has been consistent in fighting corruption because we believe that corruption is number one human rights, it's number one gross violation of human rights. And every other aspect in society, if corruption is not dealt with, that means we will not deal with human rights. And everybody here, including Lamasela, their rights will be violated. My question is to the UDM. Since 1997, up until date, you guys have been in and out in courts, in parliament. We've seen the PIC inquiries because of you. We've seen that you are the vanguard of the pensioners. We've seen that the state capture inquiry, you are part of that. What is it that you are going to do continuously to make sure that corruption is rooted out of society and that human rights are upheld in our society going forward, and we live in a dignified and a prosperous South Africa for all?
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's take a question from the IFP now. Please introduce yourself, Buti.
Okay, my name is Wiseman Madlala. So my question is directed to the IFP. I need to know from the leader how they are going to deal with the corruption if they are going to get...
Speak louder, please, Wiseman, so that they can hear you.
All right. I need to... All right. My question is directed to the IFP to say how they are going to deal with corruption, more especially in SOEs.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's next? Oh, okay. So, all right, we've got somebody from the ANC. You can go ahead. Perhaps let me move over to this side. ANC. Okay, but I was called here first. I've got a director. We'll come to the DA. Yes, Sisi, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nontetselelo, a citizen of Johannesburg. I think it's unfair that we got political leaders here, especially the DA and EFF, and even the ACDP and Freedom Plus, in front of us here fooling our people. The DA in 2016, when they were campaigning, they promised us in Johannesburg 1 million jobs as young people. We are still waiting for those jobs, DA. You and the EFF. And also we've seen the filth. We've seen the filth of the streets of Johannesburg. So you cannot carry on and fool our people here. And then SADP, what are you doing with the churches which are looting money from the poor people? You say that ANC is corrupt while you yourself as Christian-based organization, you cannot deal with the churches looting the money from the ordinary citizens of South Africa.
Thank you very much. Your fellow member here is trying to ask a question from the DA. Thank you very much, ANC. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Dedi.
Please speak up so that we can...
My name is Dedi. I'm a member of the DA. I'm an activist. So the leader, this question is based on you solely. What is the DA plan to fighting the corruption? Are we going to waste more state resources with the endless of the commission, like the so-called the ANC?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So is that the last question? Okay, the ACDP.
Thank you very much for being given this opportunity. I have got a very short question directed to Steve, of course. Steve, we all know that in ACDP there was never corruption, and no any leader found wanting in ACDP concerning to corruption. So this is the question now, as we are going to take government after the 8th of May, and you are going to be the Minister of Justice. Tell us what you are going to do, as we all know that the justice system in South Africa is going down.
Okay.
So as ACDP, what are you promising us as the voters?
Okay, so if you'll allow me, are we sitting out your leaders' responses? I'm going to, okay, ACDP, I see you've already got the mic. So what we'll do then, we'll get the responses alphabetically, and we're going to count down. It is going to be a minute each.
1 minute. Well, thank you. Firstly, to the question from the ANC about the churches, enforce the existing laws. Those churches that are stealing money must be prosecuted. The money that's going overseas, money laundering, there's sufficient prosecutional authority to take steps. Secondly, thank you for the vote of confidence from the ACDP. We will be governing. We stand for justice and righteousness. Justice and righteousness. We will equip. We will get rid of all the corrupt National Prosecuting Authority, the corrupt policemen. We will arrest people and lock them away. I've said to President Ramaphosa, when are you going to arrest people? We don't have to wait for the Zondo Commission. There's enough evidence now. We will equip our prosecutors, our investigators, and we'll get the money back that has been stolen. We'll get the money back. Thank you so much.
ACDP, that will deny your leader a minute in the next round if you continue. Thank you very much. Professor Mkhize?
Well, I just want to assure the listeners that the ANC is aiming at an outstanding victory so as to continue with the transformation agenda, so as to continue ensuring that the poorest of the poor are included. Even in terms of the Constitution, we are ensuring that the rights are protected and people have access to land in an equitable manner. Vote ANC.
Okay, I just want to say this. I know I have asked and appealed over and over again that if we do not give the leaders an opportunity to respond, that I will penalize your leader. Then, beyond penalizing, what I'll do is that I'll give the next leader an extra 30 seconds to speak. So you decide what you want. Okay, DA?
Does that mean I've got extra 30 seconds?
Not yet. We haven't started it.
Okay, to the question from my colleague, I mean, our manifesto is very explicit. We're recommending a 15-year sentence conviction for corruption, and that is non-negotiable. But over and beyond that, I think political parties should be exemplary in dealing with corrupt elements when they happen in the organization. Many of you who are aware with the developments in the city of Johannesburg would know that an MMC was fired for using council resources resources for an international trip to bring a family member to that trip. So that is one evidence of how we seriously take the fight against corruption where it happens in our elements. And back to the question about job creation, I think we shouldn't be naive about developments for purposes of contest here. What happened in the city of Johannesburg since the DL-led administration has been in power, we've restored investor confidence in the city of Johannesburg. We have turned the financial situation in the city of Johannesburg. And to this date, since that administration came into power, there's been over 100,000 jobs that have been created in the city of Johannesburg.
Okay, thank
so
you, Mr.
it is a complete lie to argue that nothing has been done in job creation.
Your time is up. I see Ms. Mashego is looking for her 30 seconds, and some of you are giving that to her. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think the ANC needs to deal with the issue of the 2 billion rand and, in Limpopo and the 300 million in the West Rand municipalities that were looted towards VBS corruption, and leave us out of that. Let's deal with the issue of public servants who are corrupt. The first thing the EFF is going to do is to bring the NPA, the National Prosecutions Authority, under the constitutional accountability of Parliament directly, because it's currently not. And that is why there's so much corruption and it's so difficult to get people properly prosecuted and sent to jail. But the second thing we're going to do, we're going to impose a minimum of 20 years jail sentences for all public officials and public servants who are found to be corrupt. But more importantly, we're going to take away their pensions. We're going to force them to do community service when they come back from jail. We're also going to ban them from future employment in the public service, because we want an absolutely zero tolerance approach towards corruption in the state. But also, we are going to proactively stop labor broking and tenders, because that's where the source of corruption comes from. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wiseman, for... Does it mean I'm going to get an extra 2 minutes, Tsepiso? I'm getting extra 2 minutes.
He will get that 4 minutes that you keep asking for.
Thank you.
So please give him an opportunity.
No, thank you. Thanks, Wiseman, for your question. IFP is the only party which is corrupt-free. You mentioned all the Zondo Commission. All the names have been mentioned. There's not a single IFP leader that has been mentioned in Zondo Commission. We are led by a leader who has integrity, which is something that is lacking from many political parties, especially in this House. DA must be reminded that we are not the only one who's running the government in the city of Johannesburg. IFP is part of that. Please be reminded, the reason why you are seeing such a development in the city of Johannesburg is because the IFP is putting an eye on you. As far as the SOEs are concerned, the IFP is very clear. Employ people based on their qualifications and,
Thank you, Mr.
and based on their competence.
Thank you, Mr. Ngobes. Sir Anton Alberts of Freedom Front Plus. Thank you.
The ANC has had 25 years to implement their policies, but they're more concerned about virtue signaling about human rights. They're talking about it, but they're not walking the talk. They are not implementing what they're supposed to implement. And they've become a corrupt organization that loots just for a few people, while most of the other people are still suffering. So we've got to implement, first of all, a corruption-free environment. Our laws at the moment are quite good in that respect. But the problem is nobody is prosecuted. Nobody on a high level is in court at the moment for corruption. We see what's happening in the Zondo Commission. We see what's happening in the Public Investment Corporation Commission, but yet no prosecution. In fact, some of those people implicated sit on the ANC's election list. So we must create a corruption-free environment, first of all. And that can happen in future. And my colleague in IFP has alluded to it by coalition governments that we have now in Johannesburg and Pretoria, that the Freedom Front is also a member of. Thank you.
Okay, go to Ms. Notenja.
Thank you, Ngama, for the question.
Thank you very much.
The UTM has been very consistent in rooting out corruption. We started with the arms deal. We followed with the chairperson of the IEC. The latest one is the PIC, where the pensions of the civil servants is being misused. So when we in government, we will continue to uproot corruption because we believe that corruption destroys the future of our children. We believe that the corruption destroys the gains of this democracy. So in UTM, we believe that corrupt people belongs in jail, not to be rewarded as we are seeing at the moment. When you are corrupt in this department, you are moved to go and perpetuate corruption in another department.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would just... Tasneem Esop. As you can hear, thank you, Siabong. UTM, this is my final warning, thank you. And the ANC, it is my final warning, thank you. Tasneem Esop, it's clear, obviously, the issue of corruption is a bugbear. The political parties are trading blame. The question is there power without money? And does power or incumbency bring about it the baggage of possibility of corruption?
Yeah, look, I think this is an issue that we keep coming back to. Corruption is clearly central to this election. It was central to the last one and the 2014 election. And it continues to be something that we debate. But I also want to get beyond the discussion about corruption, which I think is very important, don't get me wrong, it's central to what's going on in the country. But let's also talk about other ways of getting money into the system, getting money into the country. And I'm thinking here about things like illicit financial flows. I'm thinking about how not addressing issues like that is allowing a situation where the high levels of inequality and so on are not addressed. So I'd like to hear from the parties, perhaps what their policies are on that. But also, again, that is there consistency in your policies around corporate taxing, illicit financial flows, tax base erosion, and so on, and how we can get that additional, funding into the system. So I think it's also important that we balance all of these discussions about corruption, about tax, and about how we actually implement some of the things that the parties are talking about.
Dr. Ngwane?
Yeah, I agree there. I think that we have actually a system which encourages corruption because it says that the rich must get richer, the poor must get poorer. And then also it uses public funds to fill private pockets through the tender system. So there's a fight now over, who will get the tender. People actually go into politics because they want to enrich themselves. So I think that one thing we should do, we should reduce the salaries of public representatives so that we get people who are committed, who want to serve the community rather than to make themselves richer. Also, a while ago there was talk about public servants or politicians using public services. What happened to that? People are using medical aid whilst the poor are going to Bara, to the Slagpal to die. I think that, politicians must also share the suffering of the mass of the people. And then lastly, I heard the Freedom Front person talk about merit, but I was wondering, how much merit there was under apartheid and how will the black people, the working class, who were disadvantaged in the past, how are they going to be lifted up? Because now everyone doesn't want affirmative action,
okay,
etc.
Dr. Ngwane, in fact, I'd like to pick up that and enter into our last two themes, and I'm going to marry them, and perhaps you'll understand why. If we talk about access to healthcare, universal health coverage, and we also talk about the issue of land, which was raised earlier on, we know South Africa suffers from this problem, especially in particular areas where people cannot have access to clinics because they are on somebody's land. and the issue of qualified doctors. Nobody has spoken about stockouts, which was a major feature of the healthcare system in the past 3 or 4 years. Have those problems really been fixed? This is the question that I'm asking. If I could just give you a minute each to talk about that, and whether or not it's worth our while for the private sector to grow if we're going to have universal health coverage. I'm going to start with the ACDP. Your minute starts now.
Well, I think these are very important issues. The illicit financial flows are very important. We know Moody's is going to come out with their credit rating tomorrow. The issue of land is crucial. For us as biblical believers, we believe the wrongs of the past must be addressed through restitution. That process has failed because of corruption. So we say, let's go to the Constitutional Court and test the parameters of Section 25 as it is at the moment. As far as public servants are concerned, we need to attract good leaders as well. We need to understand that we need God-fearing, trustworthy people that hate dishonest gain. And we as biblical believers understand that is the biblical injunction. So we need to be careful that we are not attracting people in leadership that are not able to take those leadership management decisions, which leads to illicit capital flows. The tobacco industry, those funds are not being collected. And so we've got to ensure that our revenue basis is sufficient so that we've got capital and enough budget to deal with all the issues, to deal with the socioeconomic issues that we are faced with, and the third generation human rights that we do not have the budget for. Health, education, it keeps coming up. Budget, corruption, finances. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You know, we haven't said much about the National Health Insurance Scheme. It's a big issue for this country, which we haven't celebrated. It has been driven over a long period of time, and its aim is basically to equalize access to health, as it is the case in all other countries. In other words, there's no it will do away with the private healthcare system for the rich and the elite, but will ensure that the NHIS zones, they give people equal access to health. That's the achievement we have made, and it's in our manifesto. It's now driven from the President's office. And the President is driving the investments companies in these countries, looking at trillions. And the agenda is clear, is to ensure that we drive the inclusion economic policy. Because if we don't do that, then we're not going to be able to strengthen small businesses. We're not going to be able to strengthen cooperatives. We're not going to be able to fund and grow small business so that we grow South Africa together.
We're going to take We're going to take a quick break and return here to the election debate here at Constitution Hill. As you can hear, a very lively crowd talking about very important issues central to human rights here in South Africa. We'll be back shortly.
1 minute.
Welcome back. You are live here with us at Full View on Constitution Hill, speaking to 7 of the top political parties. From the perspective of human rights, we are looking at health, education, land, and corruption. By far, corruption getting the biggest reaction from the crowd, and we were getting the various responses from them. So let me just give you the last 5 speakers to give your reaction to the questions that are asked, and then we'll go back to the crowd for questions.
Thanks, Tepiso. Dr. Wan raises an important question about the influence of power on politicians and the dilution of the tender system. And I think one of the important elements is ethical leadership. And ethical leadership requires that, you know, where there is wrongdoing, regardless of the seniority or the popularity of the leader, as political parties, we must be exemplary in dealing with that internally and not have this contest now between the VBS, you know, looters and Bosasa beneficiaries, where it's a contest about who stole more, who stole less, because we need organizations to take decisive actions against leaders who have been found to be involved in corruption and not elevate them to serving in senior leadership positions, because that does not restore public confidence in the ability of organizations to reform. But with the issue of national health insurance, the interesting thing is, at this stage, the public health system is broken. So you've got the ruling party.
Okay, and your time is up, Mr. Malatsi. Ms. Mashoko, that sounded like a swipe at the EFF, your coalition partners. What is your response to that?
We are not in coalition with anyone, let alone the DA. I think that has been made very clear.
Is that a marriage gone
bad? A coalition agreement is where you sign a document. We didn't sign anything. We have a voting arrangement which leaves us independence. As soon as they start not delivering, we are able to withdraw and take certain actions. Ask Solim Simang what we do to people who don't deliver to our poor people. Let's get to the issues that you raised, which were critical. There was the first issue about health access. So the first thing that the EFF, and I've said this before, we want to make sure that all wards have got 24-hour clinics, because to ensure universal health coverage, you have to make sure that primary health care is taken care of. For instance, you've got community health care workers that could add a lot of value in the value chain of delivering medicines and taking care of people with chronic illnesses, but they are employed through labor broking under the DA and the ANC, and we're going to put a stop to that. Let me come back to the issue of alternative income streams. We've mentioned, obviously, all our policies are premised on land expropriation. I believe you've used up your time. But I need to attend to the illicit financial flows, because
you have
several
to stop
times
now,
the ANC
I'm going to cut off your microphone.
From howling.
Mr. Ngobese, I'm going to move on to you.
Well, unfortunately, we are living in a country where there are two communities, those who have and those who haven't got anything. So those are the two communities that we live in. Till such time that everybody has equal access to the health system, that is when we will realize the free South Africa. For now, we are living in a very unequal society where you are judged based on the size of your pocket.
Okay. So, Mr. Albert, your minute starts now.
Thank you. South Africa is one of the highest tax countries in the world, and that tax money doesn't go back to the people. So that's why we see hospitals that don't work. We also see, with regards to merit, that people are not appointed on merit, but they're appointed because they are card-carrying ANC members. It's important to appoint the right people who can do the job. If you can't do the job, you can't be appointed. It's simple as that. That's why merit is important. And it's not code for white people. It is code for the most meritorious person. And it can be anybody. It can be a black person, colored, Indian, or white.
Okay.
So that's
Mr.
very important
Alberts,
to fix
I believe
the
your
system
time
going
is
forward.
up. Thank you very much. And a final response from Ms. Nontenya.
The UTM fully agrees that the land at the moment is in the hands of the few. But what was passed in Parliament to address that still leaves a lot of questions outstanding. Which land are we going to expropriate now and how? And which land are we going to say we are going to leave this land? And how are we going to do economically? Because you cannot touch your economic without touching your land.
All right, thank you very much. And I just need to make this point to my panelists here. I do have a technical crew that is counting with a stopwatch. I'm not making the decisions by myself. Sometimes you get so heated up, you start a conversation, and halfway through you forget where you are going and the time is up. So I'm going to take questions. The final 7 questions from land and race. I notice it almost seems like there is a pussyfooting around this issue, yet they are some of the biggest issues in this country. Is it because the political party membership that is here feels satisfied with the status quo? Let's take a question.
Thank you very much. My name is Lucky Chavala from the south of
Thank you very much. Let's allow Lucky to ask his questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. My question is directed to Commissioner Mandisa Mashiho about the 4th Industrial Revolution. I wanted to know from Commissioner Mandisa to say how is the EFS going to ensure that it catalyzes the 4th Industrial Revolution, because the third Industrial Revolution from the yellow side, it has never happened. It was very rhetorical. So as the EFF, we want to know that how are we going to ensure that we deliver to the people of South Africa. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a question from the EFF to, I've got somebody here from the ANC.
Yeah,
but
thank you very
much. Did you not ask a question before?
No, I may be looking familiar to someone else, but we're all ANC here.
Okay, no, it's up to your party. If they feel happy with that, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Mozinchengila from the ANC, obviously. I would like to ask a question, but opening with the preamble, that South Africa comes from a very dark history of land dispossession, apartheid, and the inequalities. So we are faced with Orania, we are faced with the issues of farm killings, socio-economic exploitation.
So your question is?
But the question directly to the ANC, what is the ANC position in terms of the manifesto on the issue of land, agrarian reform, and economic development? Thank you very much.
Okay, so you are from the UDM.
Good evening, my name is Mbuso Poswa. I'm from the UDM. So, Mrs. Nontenja, we've been to Artichville, Sourceville, and also in Western Cape. We've seen the state of the people where they live in those informal settlements. So since you guys as the UDM are pioneers of the environment, what are you guys going to do after elections when you win power? Are you guys going to help the people to live in better situations, since you're saying you guys are for dignity and prosperity for all? Thank you.
I have the ACDP here on the right, yes?
My name is Thabo Mofokeng from the ACDP. I would like to pose my question to our Honorable Steve Swart. My question is simple. We understand that there is a cry out currently in our country for land expropriation without compensation. However, the ACDP has taken a different stand. We would like to understand why it has taken that different stand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Please give him an opportunity.
Sanbonani, my question is all about...
Which party and who are you asking your
My
question
name is
to?
Prince Mtetwa. I'm a member of African Content Movement. Daudi Mswening. My question is to the ANC and the EFF, not all about the DAP. DAP don't care about the poor people. asking about, no one speaking about behalf of the artist. No one be speaking about the creative artist. No one speaking anyone but artists and the kids, or about sports. People, they are selling the city on the street. The people from outside, they're selling the city on the street. No one checking for anybody, the artist. I want to asking the ANC, what about the artist?
Okay.
Who can put our artists?
Okay, thank you very much. Question from the DA.
My name is Deborah. I'm from Alexandra. This question is directed to the most diversified party in the country, the DA. My question is about how you're going to deal with the issue of ESCOM.
Okay,
thank you
very much. IFP?
I'd like to ask the...
Please allow IFP to ask a question.
My question is based to IFP. According to the National Statistics of Land, the state owns about 24% in the moment. I want to ask the IFP if they take over. If they take over.
DA, ANC, please.
If they take over on 28 May, on the 8th May, I want to know what are they going to do with that land. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, just before I get the political parties to respond, perhaps if I could just get my analysts to just for a minute reflect on some of the questions that are coming from the floor, but also what the political parties have said. What is new in their manifestos? Has anything changed given the change or the attempt to change legislation for expropriation without compensation? In other words, people are saying the conversation continues, but there's no material change. Dr. Hongwan.
Yeah, well, I think the EFF said they tried and they got the law passed, but now I think she said the ANC is dilly-dallying. So it could be that, you know, when we rely on parliamentary processes, things take long, you know, there'll be more delay, and then people will say, let's wait after the election. What if the EFF gets less, then there's no one to push? So I think that what we need in South Africa is what I can call, you know, like the people here, an activist voter. People who are active, who are informed, you know, who vote for you, but on condition that you deliver. Don't vote and just fold your arms and sit at home. People who put pressure on the politicians, on the councillors, on the mayors, so that they deliver. I think one thing which can help is what we call the right of recall. If people don't deliver, they should be removed and be replaced by better candidates.
Yeah, I mean, my fear with the debate around expropriation of land without compensation is that I get a sense that in some ways we may be just being pulled along here, right? And I think we need very urgently, and perhaps election season is not the right time for this, but I mean, I expect that as soon as a government is constituted, that we start to get real discussions about plans on land expropriation without compensation and how that's going to happen. Because I think it's really dangerous for us to center this debate, talk about this debate, and then do nothing about it or take really long to do anything about it. And I think that's a problem that I'm worried about here. I just want to touch on two things. You raised universal health coverage, and I think that it's really important that we note that not all parties agree on universal health coverage. And the second thing is that one of the questions from the floor was around the fourth industrial revolution. And a really simple issue that we can point to here is the high cost of data. It might not be directly talking about the big issues of the fourth industrial revolution, but really how parties want to deal with this very simple issue that, you know, has taken very long to even get onto the discussion table. And I think we need a bit of accountability on that.
I'm going to give the political parties an opportunity to respond to the questions and some of the issues raised. So I'm going to start with the UDM, and we're going to go all the way over there. So let's start with the UDM. Your response to some of the questions that were asked, also on land, they're calling you the pioneer of land reform. What do you intend to do going on, especially if you go into power? And perhaps if you could just respond to what the analyst was saying as well in a minute.
Thank you. The UDM believes that the question of land cannot be decided by one political party, the one that's taken over. It must be the issue that must be dealt with largely, extensively, because You have the land that produces for the country. You have the land that belongs to the traditional leaders, which is entrusted to them. You have the land that is needed for building houses. You have the land that is lying fallen somewhere. So we need an indaba when it comes to the land. You can't just wake up tomorrow and say you are expropriating from A to B. And you have the land that's been taken by the elites that has just come into power. How do we deal with those dynamics? That's the UTM.
Okay.
If we just take land from one to the other, as my colleague has said, we are just rearranging the deck chairs on a Titanic. We need to grow the economy as well. So we can look at Zimbabwe as an example. You know, the people have land, but they're still poor and they're hungry. We need to look at more than just land. But it's important that people have the right to have access to land, and that the middle class can grow, and people have title deeds. Because once they have title deeds, they own the land and they own the house on the land, they will be able to access credit and they will be able to advance themselves in a way. So we've got to look at advancing the economy to grow the middle class so people can have more access to land, and ensure that the people who come to the cities, because most people leave the rural areas and they come to the cities, that they are accommodated over there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the IFP?
The IFP believes in expropriation of land with compensation. The reason we are saying that is that people must be skilled how to use the land. We should not just take the land from a certain group and give it to another group without the proper skills development. We don't believe in a land grab where we just grab a land and give it to the people so that they can build shacks and squat in that particular land. There has to be a reason why we are expropriating land.
Okay. So the EFF?
Yes. You know, it's difficult to give you all the detail, but we have clearly stipulated in our manifesto that we're going to establish a series of research and development centers into various sectors. Top on the list is the energy sector, because you know we've got the ESCOM crisis. But you would know that because the EFF is going to nationalize, especially natural and mineral resources that are strategic to the economy, we will, within the energy sector, not allow privatization of renewable energy service providers, as has happened now, criminally so, under Cyril Ramaphosa. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that all those private deals that he signed are actually scrapped, because that's one of the critical areas. Within the context of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, it's the same issue. You're not going to jump into the Fourth Industrial Revolution without research and development. You're not going to get into it without making sure that processing, manufacturing, across various sectors, that you actually look into the research aspect of the ICT sector. But I wanted to touch on the land issue because it kept on being brought up, and we've touched on it before, but I wanted to repeat an issue. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mashirabo. Thank you very much, EFF. Mr. Malazi.
Thank you very much. Look, our position towards the energy crisis that we face is that...
Thank you very much, EFF and ANC. Please allow the DA an opportunity.
So we need to diversify means of energy generation, because currently ESCOM is failing to cope with the ever-increasing demand. So we need to make provision for independent power producers to be allowed into the space so that we can take pressure off the national grid. We also need to incentivize the use of solar panels so that, again, we can have this broadened space to generating energy. But more importantly, it's about also breaking down ESCOM so that there is an entity for maintenance and there is an entity for generation. And unlike my colleagues, it's important to privatize elements of that so that there can be competitive bidding in that space to generate energy. With regards to health, I mean, you know, the position of the ruling party is to aim for a Ferrari when they can't even drive an Uno. Our primary health care currently is unacceptable.
Thank you very much,
So we need to invest in access to primary health care.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malasi. Thank you, DA.
Thank you very much. There was a question about the creative industry. I think it's important to talk to what is in our manifesto. Issues of content are very, very important.
EFF?
We will be focusing and developing the new entrance into the creative industry, so as to make sure that we strive in developing our own content. But with regard to the question of Section 25 of the Constitution, we, as the ruling party, we have had an opportunity, but because we are balancing the rights of those who are protected under the Constitution and those who want to make entry aggressively, radically, it has been important for us to go through a consultative process throughout the country.
Thank you very much,
from
Dr.
people
Mkhize.
and really ensuring
Thank
that
you very much.
we strengthen our...
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for...
Thank you, ANC. Thank you, ANC.
Thank you
Dr.
for the
Mkhize.
question. The ACDP stance is very clear. Reverend Meshwe believes to unite, to build and grow. And whilst we understand the need for justice and restitution, we as believers have got a ministry of reconciliation. We are commanded to be peacemakers, and we are concerned about the hate speech and the division in society that the land issue has resulted in. Our answer on Section 25 was, firstly, the Human Rights Commission said there's no need to amend it in their submission. We agree. Let us go to the court and let the court give us the parameters of expropriation, and we do not support expropriation without compensation, but it is disgraceful that the budget for this is less than the budget for VIP protection.
ACDP.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much to all the political parties. Thank you very much to all the political parties. I would like to thank the political parties for their participation, and mostly thank you very much, ANC and ACDP and DA. Please allow our hosts to thank you for being here. I hand you over now to Commissioner Angie Makwetla.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tsepiso. On behalf of the South African Human Rights Commission, I would like to first of all thank the South African Broadcasting Corporation for accommodating us, because our task is to promote.
Apologies, Commissioner, you can continue.
Our job is to promote and create an awareness of human rights in South Africa, and this was a great opportunity to give the political parties, the political leaders, an opportunity to tell South Africa what it is they will do to uphold the rights of the people of South Africa. So thank you very much for the supporters for being here, for the organizers, for the South African Human Rights Commission, for a brilliant initiative. I really thank you for having given us this opportunity to be here tonight and to engage with South Africa on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you to all of you. We take you back to our studios. Stephen Groothuis. Enjoy the rest of the viewing.